Hey guys, it is Carl Brown here, and welcome to another Too Much Gain podcast. Now, I appreciate the really cool response you guys gave us for our first podcast that we did last week, so we're going to crank some more of these out. These are actually kind of fun to do, and we got some great ideas for some videos, so keep those coming in the comments, things you want us to see us talk about. It's actually a lot of pretty easy. This is basically what me and my brother do. We film all the content for all the songs and everything. We do all that stuff up here at my place. So he lives about 40 miles from me. So he drives up usually the night before, and he'll stay here, and then we'll film in the morning. So we always have a couple nights a week where we're just hanging out downstairs and just, chilling and just talking about stuff like this all the time. So this is kind of like we're just doing it in front of a camera now. So it's a lot of fun. So I'm glad you guys are joining us, and we have a our first controversial subject today. Should Metallica continue to make new albums, or just maybe tour their old repertoire and as a nostalgia act? So we've got thoughts on it, and I'm sure you guys too, so we want to hear those as well in the comments. All right, so let's get into our first controversial topic. This is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, well, I think probably the main controversy is that I am not an AI bot from
I forgot about that.
It's hard to believe, but I am not an AI bot. I did get a haircut to match up the twindom a little bit, took it a little tighter. A little tighter than I wanted to. I don't know what a half inch is in Thailand, but it's a lot tighter than it is here.
I think it looks pretty slick.
But yeah, I think we're also somebody requested that we shake hands because this is impossible to do on AI. Although I think you can do everything. You can make a Drake album in AI, right? So
and apparently it's better than Drake.
Is it? I wouldn't know because
I've never listened. I don't know Drake's music.
Yeah, we're like in the same boat. Like if you played a Drake, I'm sure we've heard Drake songs.
But I wouldn't.
Shows you how like you're doing a music podcast and you've never heard of Drake. I'm sure I have. I'm sure you can't get away without. But I wouldn't. Unless
I watch like sports and commercials, and I'm sure his music's in that, and I don't. But I just goes in one ear and out the other.
All right, but this isn't a Drake chat. This is a Metallica chat.
Also, Chaplin is here today, and Chaplin's a little under the weather today. I gave him some rotisserie chicken that does not agree with him last night, so he's
out. Let's hope he stays out.
He's feeling it a bit this morning. All right, so let's jump into it.
All right, so the main thing this mainly comes from we release a lot of Metallica content, and whenever we do a newer song, we always get a ton of stuff like why are you doing this stuff? They've got so much better stuff from way back, even though we've already done most of it. Why are you even bothered? Old Metallica is the real Metallica. What are you doing? They shouldn't be making songs. And there's videos on the internet where totally slagging on Kirk Hammett, his contributions,
replacing his solos.
Yeah, replacing his solos, and he's just mailing in his solos. So let's
have
Maui.
Yeah, that'd be a nice place.
I think he lives on Oahu.
Is on Oahu?
Yeah, he lives on Oahu.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I looked it up when I was there. But so let's try to figure out, so what everyone thinks would be, because you have different Metallica camps. You have people that don't like anything. Big Metallica fans don't like anything up into the Black Album, and then you got people that will include the Black Album, and then you got people that will listen to anything that's Metallica. So they all have their opinions, and it's all like a massive amount of people. It is one of the very biggest bands in the world, and by far the biggest metal band in the world.
Yeah.
Will always be the biggest metal band in the world. So let's talk a little bit about their history and why we have our ideas on where their music is at and what they're actually trying to do these days with their music and their sound. And maybe we can kind of make some sense of some things and, just talk it out. And
yeah, well, kind of the big thing with what we were talking about before is that obviously Metallica, one of the most legendary bands of all time at this point, they've had a career that spanned 4 decades. Yeah. So, and obviously Metallica would not give a whatever we say in this podcast. Yeah. No.
Let's put that in there.
So basically anything I'm sure anything that suggestions we have for Metallica, they're going to follow suit. Yeah, whatever. But anyway, quite obvious that this is just our opinion, and everybody in the chat's going to have their own opinion and stuff like that. But you got to kind of look back at where Metallica is in their career. They are a legendary band that's also had a long career. So there's kind of a couple categories of bands that are really known as being the heavy hitters of their genre, right?
Or just the music industry in general.
Yeah, just the music industry. So you've got bands that every band kind of has a golden era. They just do, you know? Every band, it becomes like massive, right? The greatest bands of all time. They have this golden era of albums. Some of them are shorter.
Some of them, it encompasses their entire career because they have shorter careers.
Yeah. So that is a band like the Beatles, who reinvented themselves every single album. They all sound different, but they really had a relatively kind of short the creative period of like about, I don't know, 7 years or so.
I mean, I would
7, 8
include
years.
Led Zeppelin in that as well, even
Zeppelin
though they have
definitely.
a longer career than that.
About a decade,
Yeah.
a little over a decade, but they didn't really put out an album that their fans now don't like. I mean, Zeppelin reinvented themselves every single song. I mean, if you listen to like on the Spotify, like This Is Zeppelin radio or whatever like that, every single song is like all their biggest hits. It is like every song is amazing and completely unique from
and
the
if you
others.
think about it, Metallica's been a band about 4 times longer right now than Led Zeppelin was for their entire career.
Yeah. So Metallica had their golden period. And I think,
obviously,
I don't care really who, 99.9% of fans are going to say the golden period of Metallica was the first 5 albums.
Yeah.
Some of them first 4. Some of them a lot of it probably goes back to just the popularity of the success of the Black Album. I consider myself to be one of those. I include the Black Album. I think the Black Album is a great album. It's more stripped down. It's less thrashy than their earlier stuff, but it's got some really tight, great songs.
First of all, it's like it's always going to be personal opinion. It's also the album that got us into Metallica. It was our time. It was our album.
Yeah. So part of this comes back to nostalgia too. So we're gonna, we can touch on that, but a lot of it, if you're of a certain age at least, you're generally going to like the music that you first heard them when you first got into the band.
Yeah.
But Metallica has a lot of younger fans now too. They're in the comment fields of all of our Metallica videos. You could tell they're younger people. Most of them cite the older material as being superior too. So it's not like it's just something you grew up with. Most people say this is the golden era of Metallica. And I would also agree. But we basically have other bands like the Rolling Stones, who I guess they had a golden era as well. But then they spent most of their career, especially the past few decades, not really doing a lot of new music. They just pretty much tour. Yeah. They're a nostalgia act, pretty much. And that was actually our first concert we ever saw.
Very first concert,
which was the Steel Wheels tour.
1989.
Oh, God. Nice.
Yeah. I forgot to say, I looked this up the other night. I don't know. I just happened to, there was something like Dolly Parton had something where she was trying to do a song. Anyway, with Mick Jagger. And so I just looked up Mick Jagger. It's like, when we saw that show, I remember seeing that show and thinking, this is like an old man band. I mean, our dad took us to see it.
Yeah.
Our older brother and him were like the big fans. We really like Living Color opened it up, and that was really cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
But so I remember thinking, like, you're a kid and you're like, it's like an old man band, and I guess this might be their last tour or something. I remember kind of thinking that. Mick Jagger then was 1 year younger than we are right now. So that's uncomfortable math.
He was 23 years old.
Yeah. I mean, they were celebrating his drinking age. They all had reached drinking age.
Yeah,
did a big tour together.
That's amazing.
So anyway, a lot of people believe that's what.
How old was the bass player's girlfriend? Like 3?
I don't know. That's a different podcast. So a lot of people believe that Metallica should basically be going that route. Metallica is hands down still an amazing live band. They have so much energy. They put on these grand concerts. The 72 Seasons tour right now. I mean, people have seen the videos for this. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It looks amazing. But should Metallica just be that act? Should they bother? You know, they're taking a lot of heat.
Well, say Metallica is competing with Metallica.
Yeah.
That's their problem, and they can't. They're never going to be able to be the Metallica from the Master of Puppets and Justice for All era. They're never going to be that to their fans. They're never going to release an album that is as good as Master of Puppets to their fans. It doesn't matter. So Metallica's kind of in an unwinnable war right now, and they have to compete with themselves.
Yeah.
Their golden era, which all bands have. Metallica's...
Which no other band has to compete with themselves at that sort of level, except maybe, which is another parallel, like a U2. U2 has a very different band, but they have the same kind of
same career trajectory.
They've had a golden era, which most of their fans are like, these are their greatest albums.
Yeah.
They still release albums and they tour on them. They tour stadiums, just
and not
like
a
Metallica.
single one of their fans will say that's one of their best albums.
But they have good tracks on each album. But on
it's
the
not
albums
bad
as a
music.
whole,
It's not bad music, but compared, there is it's like when we talk about Metallica and the music they're doing now. I have to I transcribe a lot of their music. Obviously, if I'm going to listen to Metallica just as a fan, I'm probably going to listen to my own personal favorites are anything Ride the Lightning Through the Black Album. I like Kill 'Em All, but a little bit raw for me.
Yeah,
and I feel like they haven't really fully developed their sound yet. Ride the Lightning, it really came together.
Yeah, there are great songs on that album, but I enjoy the live versions of those songs more than the album.
Yeah.
I like the way they play them these days.
Yeah, I liked Metallica. Really got into Metallica's like the Ride the Lightning and on through the Black Album. So I would listen to that era myself too, but do I think that the music they've done since is not any good? No, I think they got some really good stuff on it. I think a lot of fans are disappointed when they compared it to old Metallica.
Yeah.
And I think you can kind of just look at it like the type of music that Metallica is doing now. I feel like it's music. It's almost like a live vehicle for them because they've become this live behemoth. Right?
Yeah.
And they don't you can tell they want to play music that they have fun playing live.
Exactly.
That sounds good live. That's got kind of like fast and loose and not overly like Kirk Hammett's soloing style now from like after the Black Album especially is kind of like his little solo breaks that when we saw them. The only time we ever saw Metallica live play, by the way, play live is their tour with Guns N' Roses and Faith No More. That's the only time that I've actually ever seen Metallica play live.
Which is a great show.
Which is a great show. It's kind of bittersweet because it was like a couple weeks after that pyrotechnic accident in Montreal, I guess where it happened. And so James wasn't playing guitar. He was literally just bandaged up. His arms were these big old bandages, and he just was running around the stage.
Yeah. It was like a rescheduled show. They had to reschedule
it because he was burnt up.
But I think it's kind of cool that we got to see Metallica that way. I mean, it was like how many people...
Yeah, James was still jumping off the stage and getting in the crowd and everything. Yeah. I mean, he was like putting on a great show, but I still haven't seen James Hetfield play guitar in person, which is odd. But
that wasn't odd to work. Faith No More opened it, which I love Faith No More as well. But then Metallica plays for 3 hours. Then GNR plays for 3 hours. I don't know if I would want to play a 3-hour show after Metallica. That was just, I remember we couldn't even keep our heads up because we were like, way up in the nosebleeds, but we were like, we couldn't even drive home.
The stadium in Columbia,
we couldn't
South
lift
Carolina.
our heads because we were just, they just kind of tore right through that place.
It's a great show. So anyway, but I think Metallica's music now, if you want to kind of draw parallels, what are they doing? I think they're doing music that they actually enjoy performing live, and they don't have to hold their breath like a lot of stuff that they do on And Justice for All and some of their earlier stuff. I mean, I'm sure they still play and they play that stuff well, but they're probably like, if we really want to get this ultra technical stuff, we want our shows to be big, huge, fun. And a lot of people, like so you can see in the common areas with people who go to their shows and they don't like the new material. And then they see them play it live.
And they like it.
And they like it.
Yeah,
they like it a lot more. Vibe. It's got a totally vibe. And I almost feel like that's what Metallica's going for. They're like a live band now. And I don't think their albums are an afterthought, but you can tell they put a lot of work into their music and stuff. But, I feel like that's where they go. And we can talk about Kirk's style or whatever.
Yeah, we were talking a couple weeks ago. We were talking about... I just remember we were talking about, and you were talking about how the industry changed. You know, and as a guitar player, you have a really good perspective on like where Kirk's playing. You know, a lot of people, they really slag on Kirk that he's not like James. You see him live. James sounds exactly like he did then. He's competing with his 25-year-old self, which is impossible, but he's still an unbelievable musician. Of course, their bass player is great now. You know, people slag on Lars, but Lars is what he is. They have that fast, loose feel when they're playing live, and you know, that's just the way that it is. But most people, when they're talking about the albums, they're talking about Kirk's solos and like his like basically, if Metallica had a Thanksgiving dinner, Kirk would forget to bring the cranberry sauce. He's not bringing his part of the equation to the thing. Well, but you had an interesting take on like where the industry kind of shifted, basically right as the Black album had come out and they were touring off the Black album.
My thoughts on Kirk has never, even in the 80s when he was doing what I think is his best solo work, and I think most people that are fans of Metallica and Kirk, I think Kirk's great guitar player for Metallica, right? But
there are some solos, especially on the Black album, that it's the highlight of the song, his solos.
Yeah, and they're not like super technical on that album.
Yeah, they're great.
But like Wherever I Have My Room,
that's great.
You cannot write a solo that more perfectly fits that song. And like back in the 80s, he's never been known as like a top tier shredder. He never was, you know, but in the 80s, that's when Metallica's really their golden era. And you could tell Kirk was competing with those guys. His solos were much more technical, much more theoretically involved as well, too. And he would develop them. They were obviously very composed solos, not like now. You can see the solos now are more off the cuff, you can tell. And he did all that. And then the Black album was recorded before any of the grunge stuff hit. So they're still doing that. And then when the grunge hit and everything just got stripped down, all those shredders are...
So you're saying starting basically with the Load album.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the shred guitar thing was gone. Most of the guys that were on TV are working at Arby's, and it's just, we're done, you know? And Metallica was one of the biggest bands in the world, and so they were able to survive that, obviously, because they weren't a hair band, they were a metal band. But their style shifted drastically as well, too. And part of it, I think, is, all right, there's no more pressure to compete with the musician side of things. So I think that affected Metallica, too. The grunge era affects you. But Kirk especially might have just gone to what he actually enjoyed playing himself. Yeah. He was never like a shred guy. He was more of he can play fast. He can do stuff. He's got his own patterns. He's got his licks that he repeats a lot and stuff. But, and he wrote some really great solos, you know, but when he got to the Load area, he's probably always wanted to be more of like a blues-based guy. Yeah. And he really took that side of his playing, but it worked with the way that Metallica did their new music.
It's Metallica's sound.
Yeah, it's Metallica's sound load. But Metallica doesn't have this technical, like crazy sound like they did in their golden era. And like I said, I think Metallica became this whole thing of like, let's write music that we enjoy playing live.
Yeah.
And
I think, you know, a lot of the thing is it sounds sort of copy and paste. His solos, you know, it's like maybe it's an AI bot. Maybe Kirk's solos are an AI bot. Maybe that's what's going on. Just, hey Siri, give us something in the style of, and it's a wah bot.
Yeah. Well, you know what his solos sound like? When we saw them play live, and if you look at...
Style of what?
That was Siri. I guess you... Yeah. See, that's my phone that just lit up. So Siri thinks my brother is me, or the same voice. I guess she agrees that... Anyway, I thought I muted that. But anyway, so we... Wow, she completely knocked my train of thought out.
So anyway, we're back to...
So when we saw them, when we were 16 or whatever, when his little solo breaks that he would do... Like 5 times in the set. Here's a little 1.5 minute Kirk solo break and and it was pretty much the same thing every time, right? That is what his solos are since then. his on the record solos. Now he's actually got some solos that got some cool things, but they're obviously kind of based around a couple positions of pentatonic, and that's what he bases his stuff around. And you listen to him in interviews, and he's like, "This is what I dig. This is what I find is a melodic way to complement like vocal melodies and all that stuff." And it really comes down to personal preference. It's not for me. I like half steps. I like the melodic concept. So I enjoy a little bit more advanced kind of push and pull in the lines, melodic lines. And Kirk likes to just kind of lay back and do kind of the, but it works in their music. It's not the most interesting thing to listen to anymore, but I think Kirk finds it fun to play. And that's like, I don't know. At least they had a golden era, and maybe it's gone, but it's still not bad. Like Metallica's music that they're doing now, compared to just rock and hard rock bands right now, there's some good hard rock bands out there. Metal, all right. There's some good stuff out there. Metallica's still better. Their albums they're putting out now is still better than 95% of it. So that's decades after their golden era. They can still compete with these younger bands, just the quality of the music. And that's saying something too. They can't compete with themselves. Nobody ever will be able to. But they're still doing stuff that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, you could basically say to any metal band these days and say, make an album that's as good as Master of Puppets. And no one's going to be able to do it.
Well, that's obviously fans of like modern metal. There's
obviously it's different styles of metal and different I'm a huge.
There's some Sleep Token fans out there that would argue.
But on a whole, like this grand masterpiece album, like you're gonna have an album that's gonna come and be revered like this in a way that those. I mean, it's an impossibility, and they're always competing against themselves.
Think about. I always say like Metallica, where they're at now, like they do the slightest thing, right, and it just gets massive press and everything's on a huge scale. Why don't they do something like another Nothing Else Matters or something like that, like a big ballad?
Yeah,
which they had these monster that
was some of their biggest hits. I mean, especially in their commercial break, the Unforgiven.
Exactly, Unforgiven. That's what those are the songs. Obviously, Enter Sandman's huge. But
how many versions do they do of Unforgiven?
I think they're on Unforgiven 87 now. It's kind of like the UFC stuff, right? It's like UFC 235. It's like, okay, WrestleMania 680. I don't know, but it's kind of one of those things. But yeah, they need to. I think a lot of their albums, like starting especially from Ride the Lightning, when you've got like Fade to Black and then you go through Master of Puppets and you've got Welcome Home Sanitarium and all that stuff, and then you've got One, and then you've got Nothing Else Matters. And if they just released a monster ballad that was like unique, not Unforgiven 15 or something like this, just a whole new unique thing, I think it would be huge.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing that separated them from the guys. There's a lot of thrash bands back then, some great thrash metal back then. They weren't really doing the whole introspective. And that's another thing too with like James. His lyrics don't ever get talked about.
Yeah, which is like that's like one of the biggest things for me in Metallica it's always been James's lyrics, like in that sort of genre, and not more so in the death metal genre where they they take the low hanging fruit and the religion and all that,
or the bands like the rock band, they all kind of, the metal band, they go for these like Nordic themes or like talk about dragons. I'm like, God, I just can't get into it, man. But Metallica talked about like real social issues, and it was kind of interesting. And then they would have those ballads like Fade to Black and all these things that were like really introspective and stuff like that. And no bands were doing that. And I feel like they've gotten away from that a little bit. And their albums sound a little bit more one-dimensional, like that's this newer one. It's more like, this is going to be a blast to play live. We're just going to rock out. Yeah. But I was like, man, why don't they release another something like that?
Yeah. And
that would be huge. But I guess they're not listening to me.
But so I guess the main thing that we're trying to say is, Metallica still makes good music.
Yeah.
They should put out albums all.
Metallica still makes good music. They just don't make as good of music as Metallica.
Yeah, that's exactly what the point is.
Yeah,
it's impossible to do so. I mean, you can't live up to that. You can't have. You're lucky enough to be touched by something to where you've got this ability to create this magic window. and really push your genre forward and just become legendary basically off of that period of their catalog.
And a lot of bands, they hang it up after that, or they either hang it up or they truly dial it in and they don't do any new music.
Yeah.
And Metallica has reinvented themselves quite a few times. They had reinvented themselves in their golden era. Those are all albums that sounded quite unique from one another.
Yeah.
So they were always not afraid to change the stuff, and they're still not afraid to kind of change things around. Yeah. There's a lot of I see a lot of similarities between Hardwired and 72 Seasons. I feel like just kind of stylistically they've kind of found this zone where they like to kind of like that kind of fast and loose stuff that's like fun to play live. And it's not that challenging to play, and it's just like whatever. I don't even like their albums are tight, right? Like drum wise, because they're playing to a click. But then live, it's a different animal.
Yeah, it's sketchy. I mean, as a drummer, it's their live shows are like a ball of energy. So I think if you're actually at the concert, you're sort of just taken over by the energy and everything. But like if you watch it on video, there are times where it kind of takes you aback of like, Lars, it's amazing that they've developed this way to play together. They sound tight, but the drums are sort of hit or miss.
So you don't think they should record their albums live?
No. I mean, I do not think they should. I mean, I don't even think Lars will hear that eventually. But it still has this great energy to it, and that's sort of their go. And I don't think they really make any apologies for that. They're not trying to be. I mean, I've read interviews of Lars from going back, after the Black album, and I remember he's like, I'm taking the double kick off the kit for this record. We really want to dial it down. We feel like we just took things so far, like with Injustice for All, where they just didn't enjoy playing it. And they would get off stage, and there's interviews of them talking about this, that they were like, we're just like relieved that we didn't just like blow the, keep screwing up out there. So we were just relieved that we were able to get through shows, and we're like, what are we doing? And so then here comes the Black album, which is a completely different, album.
And fans responded to that more than anything.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't dog Lars as a player as like a lot of people do. Lars is also a completely generation from all the metal drummers you hear these days. It's a completely different, all the gent drummer and all that kind of stuff. It's a completely
Lars is also he's a great arranger.
Yeah, his contributions to the band are immense.
Yeah.
He is
just
like,
the music
you wouldn't
of the
have.
band.
Yeah, he arranged it. He's sort of like the I don't know. He's basically outside of Bob Rock, he is the producer of the band.
Yeah.
He's the one that really helps guide along everyone's parts. You can see him talk through video of him talking through Hammett. So I mean, the only thing James doesn't even do that.
He's like, it's a kind of a good. I think it's a great team that him and Hetfield, because Hetfield is one of the greatest talents. I mean, to be in a band with a guy like that would be pretty insane. Yeah. And I think the thing about Lars is he was able to harness that and go, all right, this guy's an amazing writer, and if I can take help him craft his ideas and organize them in a more cohesive way, and I think that's what they do. And he was able to take the genius of James Hetfield and display it to the world in a way that James probably wouldn't have been able to do on his own.
It's just riff after riff, but they just seamlessly go in, and a lot of that has to do, I think, with Lars.
Yeah.
Just kind of formatting and arranging where this stuff is going.
I mean, the other guys will talk about it too. I mean, there's a reason why he's always there and stuff. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's our thoughts on it. You got anything else to say about it? No. I think we pretty much proven that Chaplin, their words.
Their albums these days are basically stuff they love to play live, and they love that live feel. That's probably that's the most important thing to them, is the live shows, and they create music that's fun to play live.
Yeah.
And that's basically where they're at,
Yeah. So. And thank God they are. They're still playing well. The guys are like almost 60 now, I guess. So they're doing pretty well. I'd like to be there when I was 60 years old. I would like to be where they're at when I was 22. But never happened. Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. We're going to keep cranking these out. Give us some more ideas of things you want us to cover, and let us know your thoughts on Metallica and where they're at with their career. And if you think that They're still doing good music. I know this is something that a lot of fans are passionate about, but what would we do without like some band like that that's still around? Wouldn't you hate it if Metallica was like broken up and nobody
you weren't able to go see Metallica?
Nobody in the band talked to one another anymore. It was just one of those bands that split up and all the guys hate each other and live in different parts of the world and just talk and all that stuff. And they're not that. They're like this brotherhood, and they care about their fan base, and they really go all out to put on these amazing tours. They keep cranking out music, where you've bands of their level most of the time don't.
Yeah.
They just call it a day and said, I'll take my 400 million and go home, Yeah. But they don't do that. They know why they do this, and they like to continue it. So anyway, that's our thoughts.
Stop hating on Metallica.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, some of it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Their way. I mean, you can't feel sorry for somebody who's
got $300 million.
Yeah. I was like, I'm sure it'll bounce right off of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you again soon for the next one.